Good morning. You're watching Hindustan Times, and I am Aditi Prasad. The stage is set for the signing of the crucial or critical Indo-US Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, which allows India access to key maps and satellite images for defense purposes. Now, two key Trump officials, Mike Pompeo and Esper, are here in India. And the meeting is possibly started at this moment while we are talking, and we understand the deal is on the table and is going to be signed today. I'm joined right now by author and national security analyst Nitin Gokhale to understand why this pact is so crucial for India. Thank you, Nitin, for joining us on Hindustan Times. Uh, what is the importance of BECA, or this Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement with the United States?
Thank you, Aditi, for having me on this program. First of all, BECA, or the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, is third of the foundational agreements, as they call it. And it is imperative for any two forces operating with each other to have all these three agreements signed, so that the interoperability between the Indian and the American forces is complete. What does the BECA bring to the table? Well, you've already said it, that crucial satellite imagery and defense maps, geospatial intelligence, as they call it, is something that can be shared by the United States now once the agreement is signed, without any reservation, without any hesitation with India. And this becomes particularly important in the current context of the standoff with China on the line of actual control. So this is just a natural progression. Remember, for 15 years after 2001, India did not sign any of the foundational agreements. But since 2016, if today the agreement gets signed, then within 4 years, India has signed three basic foundational agreements for improving interoperability with the American forces, which is a big leap as far as India-US relations are concerned.
You talked about a big leap as far as U.S. relations are concerned. You said it's not been signed for. Was there a strategic reason that we did not go ahead and sign these all these years and decided over the last few years to go ahead and sign? Or is this a change in outlook of the government, or is this change in outlook of the strategic times that we live?
It's a combination of both. During the UPA's 10 years, there was no stomach to take on China, and in deference to China's sensitivities, India hesitated to sign any of those agreements, particularly the foundational agreements, because they thought the ruling party that time, or the ruling coalition, thought that China will get offended, and it was not worth their while to offend China at that point in time. Times have changed. China's behavior in those years, in that decade between 2004 and 2014, was also not as aggressive, as belligerent as it is now. And of course, there is a change in the attitude of the government here under Prime Minister Modi, which is that while it engages with China, it doesn't hesitate to stand up to China when it comes to China's bullying on the LAC or on the border. Which was demonstrated both at Chumur in 2014 and Doklam or Dolam in 2017. And the current standoff, of course, is symptomatic of that anger that China has. So now, whether China gets angry or disturbed, it doesn't matter to India, because India has to now look after its own national interest. And India's own national interest dictates that India has these agreements or close defense cooperation with the United States. And that's why I think the change in attitude.
In the context of the ongoing standoff at the LAC and Ladakh, what extra muscle does the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, which we are likely to sign today, what does it provide India with in the context of the standoff in Ladakh?
Well, it's in the context of, particularly in the context of the standoff in Ladakh, or along the line of actual control, all along in Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, and Uttarakhand. India gets high resolution satellite imagery from the American military satellites or military facilities. And of course, the movement of the Chinese forces can be tracked real time, which India doesn't have in adequate numbers. And therefore, it is imperative that the Chinese movement or Chinese intentions are tracked by the Americans, and who will immediately be able to share in real time as they obtain the images with India, which gives India advantage of then anticipating Chinese moves whenever required. That's one. Secondly, BECA also allows the Indian Navy to get real-time information about movement of Chinese naval forces if they leave the Chinese shores in Shanghai or in other ports. Immediately, the American satellites that watch these movements will be able to share those images with the Indian naval forces, which again
Right.
is a huge plus. And therefore, I think that's something that India will welcome. And one of the reasons why it has been hastened is this particular standoff and increased tension with China.
Right. So, from what I hear you saying, that China is increasingly a cornerstone for the growing Indo-US ties. We understand that even, yesterday when the two key Trump officials, Mike Pompeo and Esper, arrived in India, they met with Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar at length. And sources tell us that the discussions focused primarily, among other things, on in the Indo-Pacific and Quad and maritime security, counter-terrorism, open connectivity, resilient supply chains, which are, all at some level aimed at containing an aggressive China.
It indeed is. I mean, China now is a cornerstone of almost all relationships across the globe. The boost to Quad, for instance, India inviting Australia to join the Malabar exercise, which was so far trilateral between India, Japan, and the United States. India's open embrace, if I can call it, of the United States. Although this is not something new, something similar had happened in early 2005 in the first few months of the UPA 2, UPA 1 rather. And that time, this was a similar momentum was witnessed. But because it was a coalition that time, the left parties then, of course, created hurdles for the Manmohan Singh government, and we did not carry the momentum through. But China will remain the centerpiece of any relationship, any strategic relationship across the globe, be it India and Australia, be it India and Japan, or India and United States, or all of them put together. So the coalition of democracies will always look at China as challenge number one, if not adversary.
Challenge number one, if not adversary. Much has been made of, the China factor and, Pompeo and Esper being here, signing of this deal. Do you believe that China will get the message? It's all right for all of us to focus so much, all these countries to focus so much on containing China. But is China really getting the message around here?
Well, whether it gets the message or not, it's difficult to say. It does get the message really. What is difficult to say is whether it wants to
Will
acknowledge that message or not, or whether it wants to publicly acknowledge that message or not. But the fact is, even if China does not acknowledge the message that the world is uniting against its belligerence, its aggressiveness, and its underhand tactics, the fact is China realizes that it is currently friendless, without any friend in the world except for North Korea and Pakistan, perhaps, and partly Russia. But Russia is more out of compulsion for Russia rather than China and Russia warmth. So, therefore, I think China does get that message. Now, how it reacts is something that we'll have to wait and watch, because so far Xi Jinping has decided to be more aggressive when confronted with aggressive trade policies and practices by the United States, or India standing up to China on the LAC. He
Right.
hasn't backed down either. So we'll have to wait and watch. But it does get the message. How he absorbs the message and how he reacts to the message is something that we are not able to decipher even today.
Even today. In fact, most of the times, whenever you do something to antagonize them, they get even more belligerent. Is what one has noticed in the past, at least in the recent past. Now, I just want to veer away towards the U.S. elections and how these two key Trump officials. Uh, Pompeo and Esper are here days before the US elects a new president or re-elects an old one, whichever way you want to look at it. Now, BECA, now, why the deal now rather than wait for the new president or the existing one to re-enter office?
I think this signifies one thing, that so close to the elections in the United States, the two officials are here, and without hesitation, the United States signing on the dotted line as far as BECA is concerned signifies how the bipartisan support in the United States is there for India, because whoever comes to power in the whoever sort of comes to White House as the next president will have to deal with India, will have to factor in India, will have to depend on India for its Indo-Pacific strategy, and therefore nobody in the Pentagon or the State Department is hesitating to sign this deal on the eve of the election, so close to the election date,
Right.
because the next administration, whichever it may be, Democratic or Republican, will continue to depend on India and will continue to factor India as the key player in Indo-Pacific, which is what the American policy is going to be for the next 20 years at least.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Nitin, and shedding light on this entire, on this deal, which is going to be one of the biggest military pacts with the United States that India is going to sign today. And we hope to see you again this evening once everything is done and dusted and the events of the day to analyze what exactly happened, how it happened, and how does it boost India's arsenal in the days and weeks and the years to come. The two sides are expected to announce the pact today once the meetings are done, the 2+2 meetings which are underway right now. Will China get the message? Nitin, of course, feels that they will definitely get the message, but how they react to it is up in the air, because whether they get more belligerent or whether they actually take note of how the entire world seems to be uniting against, with the exception of course, Pakistan and Turkey and Russia, partly. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Nitin. Thank you. And we hope to see you
Pleasure.
again in the evening. And
Yeah.
thank you, viewers, for watching this broadcast. We'll keep coming back to you with more. Keep watching Hindustan.